everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Emily, and in today's video I'm going to be doing my end of year book tag. So I'm going to be answering some questions about all the books that I read in 2023. This video is 100% inspired by Destiny. I'm going to use some of the questions that she put in her video. I'm not going to go through all of them because there's like over 20. I think I'll do like 10 to 12 questions. As I'm filming this, it is the 20th of December and I have read 95 books this year. I'm not sure if I'm going to make it to 100 by the end of December. I probably won't because it's a very busy time of the year, but the reading goal that I set myself for 2023 was 75 books on Goodreads, so I did pass that quite a while ago now, and I'm very happy that I reached my goal. Very happy with how many books I've read this year, and I also just discovered a lot of amazing books and authors this year that I really want to talk about in this video. So let's just jump straight into it. The first question is my most disappointing read of the year. I actually have two books that are going to go under this question because these two books I was very excited for them to be released in 2023, but when they came out and I read them, I was just very much disappointed, and one of them was actually a DNF for me. But the first one was Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. I've talked about this in so many videos now. This book was just not what I expected at all, and I absolutely loved Fourth Wing. And I understand that people say we need a lot more world building, and this is like more of a higher fantasy, where Fourth Wing is more of a like beginner fantasy, romantasy, sort of like easy to read book. But this book just felt like it was written by a completely different author. It just did not have the same feeling for me than Fourth Wing did, and that was why it was so disappointing to me, because it just felt like a massive drag. And this book is like 600 pages. Definitely did not need to be 600 pages. Honestly, this whole like middle section of the book, it felt like absolutely nothing happened. There was a couple of chapters where I was like mind blown with what was happening. If you know, you know, and if you've read the book, you'll know what I'm talking about. But honestly, only the start of the book and the very ending of the book were actually enjoyable to me, and I just really struggled to get through this. I actually ended up having to buy the audiobook just so I could get through it, because otherwise I was going to DNF this as well. I do think that the rest of the series will be a lot better, and I think that this is going to be a very good series as a whole, but this book in particular was just not what anyone really expected, I don't think, and it did leave on a cliffhanger. So I'm very excited to see where Rebecca Yarros goes into the third book and like the route that she takes. But yeah, this was like my most disappointing read of the whole year. And then the other read that was very disappointing actually came out this month, and that was Never by Jessa Hastings. I don't want to talk about it too much in this video because I will talk about it in my December reading wrap up, but I did DNF it at 50% through, and I know there is a lot of controversy around this book because of like the themes in the book. I personally think that there was a lot of racist parts in the book, but also people of color are saying that it's not racist. I don't know, I just felt a bit uncomfortable with some of the things that were said in the book, and also the fact that one of the main male characters wanted a girl that was underage and explicitly said that multiple times kind of just weirded me out. The world that Jessa Hastings created around this book was absolutely perfect. I think the actual world building was amazing, but the actual characters, I did not like any of the characters in the book. There was just so many little comments in the book that made me feel very uncomfortable, and I've definitely seen people say that people are overreacting, but I've also seen the other side of the equation where people feel the exact same as me, so it kind of just really depends. But that's why reading is so subjective, because everyone's going to have a different opinion about the book. Question 2 is a book that was overhyped. Now I feel like a lot of books are very overhyped, but a lot of the time if a book is very overhyped, I do end up enjoying it, so it's kind of hard to like differentiate if a book is too overhyped for what it actually is. But there was one in particular that came to mind, and that was Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. Now there's absolutely nothing wrong with this book. It was a really cute read. It's like a cowboy romance, small town romance, and I did quite enjoy this, but at the same time as that, the book was just very full of smut, and I'm not the type of person that likes reading smut in a book, so that was really hard for me to get through. Like honestly, it felt like every single chapter had like a spicy scene in it, and some people would absolutely love that, but when a story feels like it kind of has no plot and there's no actual chemistry between the characters, I just feel disconnected from it straight away, and that's why this book was a little bit disappointing to me. I think that it was way more hyped up than it should have been, and a lot of people were comparing it to Flawless by Elsie Silver, which I definitely do see how they are very similar, like the setting of the book, the cowboy vibes and everything like that, but they are also written in a completely different way. And Flawless I absolutely adored. I loved that book, but this one on the other hand, I just felt very disconnected from it. It was really quick and easy to get through, but I just think it was too hyped up for what it actually is. That being said, the second book is coming out next year and I still will go into it because I feel like it could be better. Question number 3 is my favorite book couples. So I actually have 3 book couples that I'm going to talk about for this question. They're just all equally as amazing as each other to me. Like, you could literally feel these characters and how much they loved each other throughout the pages. So the first book couple is Johnny and Shannon from Binding and Keeping 13 by Chloe Walsh, which is the first 2 books in the Boys of Torment series, also the only 2 books that I've read in the series so far. That's why they're my favorite couple so far. If you've read this series, you will know how many heartbreaking things Shannon goes through throughout those 2 books, and Johnny is kind of like, if you hurt her, I will kill you. He is so protective of her. You can feel how much they love each other, and it was like a friends to lovers relationship as well, so they established so much with each other before they were like explicitly in a relationship, and I think that that was so important for the plot line because it just made the characters feel so much deeper and they could just trust each other with literally anything. The next couple is Roman and Iris from Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This is one of my favorite books that I read in 2023. I absolutely adored this book. I loved the setting, I loved the characters, I loved the aspect and like the idea of this book, and I think their relationship was so beautiful. It was kind of like workplace enemies to lovers, but it's so much more deep than that. Like, if you've read this book, you will understand how much depth goes into this book. And going into this, I went into this book like completely blind and I had no idea what I was actually getting myself into, but I think their relationship is so beautiful, and again, you can just feel the love that they have for each other through the pages. And the third couple we're going to talk about is Bree and Archer from Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. I read this book closer to the start of the year and I still haven't stopped thinking about the characters in this book. I think this book is absolutely beautiful, and the way that their relationship was established in this book was just so wholesome and sweet, and like, this book made me cry at multiple times because of sadness but also happiness for the characters, because I just wanted the best for both of the characters in this book. The next question is my favorite book characters. These 2 characters are from the exact same series and I see a lot of people comparing them and saying who they love better, and honestly I personally cannot decide because they are so different and they both have such positive and negative traits. I just love them in every single way, and that is Magnolia and Daisy from the Magnolia Parks universe. These 2 main characters in these books are just something else. Like, I love them so much. I feel like I'm friends with them. I feel like I know them in real life because of how much depth they have in these books and how much they've been through in the past and their character development and everything like that. I am literally obsessed with this series. I finished the last book in the series this month, like at the start of the month, and every single book in the series has been a 6-star read for me. I'm obsessed with all the characters. My main thing is Daisy. She has like so much independence, and then Magnolia is just so funny and like easygoing, and I just love so many different things about them. And these characters are also so different, and you see them like bickering with each other but also being friendly with each other throughout the series. The character development and found family in this series is just amazing. The next question is a book that surprised me. So the reason I'm choosing this book is because it is from a debut author, and honestly going into it I was not expecting to love it as much as I did. This book is in my top 5 reads of the whole year. I think this book was absolutely amazing and it made me fall deep into my fantasy era, and that was Powerless by Lauren Roberts. I was just a little bit worried about the hype surrounding this book. I was worried that it wouldn't live up to the hype that everyone kind of put it on. Everyone kind of put this on a very high pedestal, but I totally understand the hype around this book. It gives like the Hunger Games, but they have magical abilities and powers. There is just something about this book that is so perfect. Like, I don't know what she put in this, but it was so addicting and page turning, and I seriously could not put it down. I think I read this in like 2 days. I had to know what was going to happen, and it also ends on the biggest cliffhanger, and I'm so excited for the second book to come out in 2024. That's probably like my most anticipated release, with the new Magnolia Parks book, of course. The next question is my favorite new author that I discovered in 2023. I had quite a few. I would have to say it's Stephanie Garber, who wrote the Caraval trilogy and the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. I read Once Upon a Broken Heart and The Ballad of Never After at the start of the year, having no idea that I was supposed to read the Caraval trilogy first. And then I went back and I read the first book in the Caraval trilogy recently, which kind of didn't live up to the hype I was expecting it to, but it also set up for a good series. I think the rest of the books in that series will be amazing. And there is just something so magical about her writing. Like, I don't know what she puts in her books, but it just feels like reading a fairy tale. I'm obsessed with all the characters she creates, the world she creates, like everything within her writing is just perfect. And I cannot wait to read the third book in this trilogy and continue the Caraval trilogy, because I just know they are all going to be 5-star reads. The next question is the most frustrating book that I read in 2023. There was one book that came to mind in particular, and that was Magnolia Park's A Long Way Home. As I said, I absolutely adore this series. They were all 6-star reads for me, and I just love everything about this series. But the way this book ended in particular just frustrated me so much. It made me sob. It left me with so many questions, and those questions do not get answered in the 4th book in this series, because this is the 3rd book, and obviously we're not going to find out anything that happened at the end of this book until the 5th book comes out in February. And that just makes me really angry, because this left on the biggest, like, I can't even say cliffhanger, just like depressing scene, and you didn't know what was going to happen next after this, and it was so unexpected. I was just not expecting it whatsoever, and I just still cannot stop thinking about it, and I still have so many questions about what happened. The next question is the longest and shortest book that I read in 2023. The longest book I read in 2023 was Keeping 13 by Chloe Walsh, which is the 2nd book in the Boys of Tormund series. This comes in at 802 pages, which is absolutely insane. I did listen to a little bit of this as an audiobook, which definitely helped me to get through it, because 800 pages is a lot. But I know the 4th book in the series is over 1,000 pages, so that's going to be even harder to get through. But even though these books are so long, they don't feel that long. They feel very fast paced for some reason. I don't know how, but these books are just so easy to get through. And then the shortest book I read was technically a novella, and that was The Gift from Frida McFadden. This was just like a little Christmassy thriller. I actually did not like it at all. I think it was really weird, and it just left me with more questions than answers at the end of the book. That being said, it's like a 53-page book, so I definitely think that if it was a long book, it would have been a really cool concept, but because it was done in 50 pages, it was just very strange and rushed. The next question is a book you haven't stopped thinking about. So obviously Magnolia Park's A Long Way Home, I already spoke about that, but the other one is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. Now, do I recommend this book? Yes, but at the same time as that, you cannot go into this book without looking up trigger warnings for it, because it is so trigger heavy and you just don't expect anything that's going to come out of this book. I definitely recommend taking it slow if you are going to read this book, because there's just so many things that you need to be wary of going into this book. But I just feel so connected to all the characters in this book. I feel like I relate to some of them. I loved like every single main character in this book. I feel like we just know so much about them, to the point where it feels like they are family, and it feels like we actually know them as real people. And there was just so many quotes in this book that were also so beautiful, and quotes that I want to remember for a really long time. Very much heavily annotated this book, and there's a lot of poetic lines and quotes in there that I annotated. But I don't think this is the kind of book where I would ever reread it just to put myself through that pain again, because I've never cried more in a book than I did in this book. Okay, I'm gonna answer 2 more questions. So the next one is the book with the most unique concept. I wasn't really sure what to pick for this one, so I picked The Naturals by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This follows a group of teenagers who all have these like special abilities. For example, one of them can read minds and tell when someone's lying, and the FBI takes these group of teenagers in to help them solve unsolved crimes from the past. So these teenagers are like living away from home with the FBI, and every single book in this series has like a mini crime to be solved, and then I believe the whole series as a whole has one big crime that we're trying to solve within every single book. So I think the concept of this is really cool. It's actually like a YA book, so it's very easy to read, very page turning, and it's only around 300 pages, so it's definitely very fast paced. And then the last question is the happiest book that I've read this year. I would have to say Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. This book had me giggling and kicking my feet, and I just loved everything about this book. I think the relationship is so sweet and wholesome, and I wish I read this book a lot sooner than I did, because I was putting this book off for a really long time thinking that it wouldn't live up to the hype. But boy was I wrong, because I am obsessed with this. I need to read more of Lynn Painter's books, because I've loved every book that I've read from her so far. I think her writing is just so easy to read and get through, and that's one of the best things about it. Her books are like the type of books where you can sit there and read it in one sitting, and I love that. So this book definitely made me the happiest in 2023. Yeah, that was the last question, so that wraps up my end of year book tag for 2023. I did one of these mid-year as well with slightly different questions, so if you want to go and watch that, definitely go and do that, because most of these books I read in the second part of the year, so the books that I talked about in that video are quite different to these ones. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you got some good recommendations out of this video as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you guys in my next video.